So often I'm accused of being a prepper, and I tell everybody I'm not a prepper. I don't prepare for anything. I just don't prepare. I mean, I don't think about those things. I live off grid. So today, I'm going to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that I'm not a prepper. As you know, we live off grid, have been living off grid for 3 years, and prior to that, we lived in a camper. We traveled around the country. We had a pop-up camper, and then we had a truck camper. The old truck camper is going to be tore down this fall. It's done its job. When we got here, we took the truck camper off the truck, lived in the truck camper while we built a tiny house. When we got the tiny house built, we moved into the tiny house, but we knew we were going to have to live in the camper when it was cold, so we built a heat exchanger, outdoor heat exchanger outside the camper. The coffee can in the side of the camper is where the ventilation went into the camper. And we used a ton of firewood. It wasn't a bad idea, it was just terribly inefficient. We used 8 cords of wood from October to January running that heat exchanger. Wood stove that we got in the house, we only used about 1 cord of wood all year. But before we got started on tiny house, we had to get firewood, obviously. So we were doing several things at once to get everything to come together. The second day we were here, after we got the camper off the truck, we put a well pump in the well. At the time, it was just a hole in the ground. It's been a pain. This well has been an absolute nightmare. I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I finally got it where it produces clean water all the time. I'm really proud of this thing. But we poured concrete. Well, when I put the first pump in, I just put bags over the hole and kind of taped it all up. Oh, water would just run down in that hole. Now we got the concrete, a well packer, a new well liner, the building, French drain. We got this ditch now that I did this year. And it's not even a very deep ditch. Keeps that water from running down into the well off the hill up here. It's made all the difference in the world, but it took me 3 years to figure this out. It was quite stressful. To me, I just wanted clean water. Carolyn didn't care. Everybody told me, oh, that water's cleaner than I have. And it just, my dad tells me all the time, well, our water's filthy. He lives down in Florida, and his is brown, so they have a reverse osmosis. And everybody's well is like that down there. I just told you yesterday, when we were nomads, we were down in Florida, and the water down there was brown. It tasted horrible unless you berkeyed the water. But now it's spotless. I still run some filters on it just to make sure the water coming in the house is perfect. It's kind of neat. We live off grid and we have perfect water. We have water that is probably cleaner. I mean, granted, I don't test it. That's why I run the Berkey. But it's probably cleaner than city water. You know, city water is allowed to have some contaminants in it. And they can tell you what the specifications are. I'm sure ours doesn't have any. By the time it enters my body, it doesn't have any contamination in it that's going to harm me. Well, then on the next day, so that, I guess the third day, we hooked up solar panels. And I was just in a hurry. I had 2 batteries. I wasn't that big of a deal. I just wanted to get the solar panels hooked up so we didn't have to run the generator very much. As nomads, we ran the generator 8 hours a day for 3 years. But here, we minimized the generator use. And I've struggled with the solar panels ever since we got here. But as you know, this last summer, did some extra work on these solar panels. Got them more efficient. I bought 2 new solar panels, but turns out I really didn't need them. What I really needed was a second charge controller. Because before, the charge controller will only let 25 amps in at a time, even though I had 50 amps worth of solar panels. So now that I got 2 charge controllers, they're both letting 25 amps in, giving me a total of 50 amps, which is what the solar panels were. Now, I've gotten it up near 60 amps because I got the extra 2 a few times now, which is always pretty exciting. The sun's starting to lower in the sky now, so we don't get direct sunlight. So we get about 50 amps now when the well pump is on, which is another thing. Prior to this modification to the solar panels, I don't know how to arrange this video. It's going to be very difficult because we went back and forth so much on different things. But prior to the solar panels being made more efficient, we ran the well pump off the generator. We've got 2 generators. We've got this little one that can't run the well pump, and then we got a 2500 dual fuel generator runs propane and gasoline. And I ran propane off that one when we were running the well, because it would take sometimes a week before I needed to run it. But now I got it more efficient. I can run the well off the solar panels for a long time. When I say long time, for like 9 o'clock or 9:30 to 2 p.m. Now I've got to have the well shut off by 2 p.m. because I want to get the batteries charged so we can run the freezer overnight. But if it wasn't for the getting the batteries charged for the freezer, you could run that well all day long until the sun went down. We have enough energy to run it. That well's 800 watts. We got 1,200 watts of solar panels. But we're always getting more efficient, just finding new ways of doing things. Carolyn has modified her way of washing clothes a dozen times, and she's always getting more efficient at it and taking less water. And we're always learning. We've got chickens, and I can come down here and feed them within 10 minutes now. I mean, it just doesn't take any work. We have since learned that we can feed them sunflower seeds for their protein. And then we can feed them all kinds of other stuff for the rest of their nutrients. But the sunflower seeds are pretty cheap. What we do, what she does, I shouldn't take any credit for it. She sprouts them. She puts them in a jar, lets them sit for a day or two, and they sprout up. And she can turn a 50-pound bag of sunflower seeds into 250 pounds bag. I would show you this again, but she doesn't do it during the summer. She does it during the winter. And the reason we do it during the winter is to help keep them warm. And this is another thing we learned. We feed them a lot of corn. Corn doesn't have any protein in it. So they're not going to lay any eggs because you're not getting them any protein. So she adds sunflower seeds into their diet so they'll eat the corn and the protein. Now the corn keeps them warm, fattens them up first of all, but it also is that sugar, carbohydrates. Corn has carbohydrates, so there's sugar in it, so they burn that sugar. And while we're talking about diet, another thing that we have learned to be more efficient is we just eat meat now. And I know I'm not trying to sell that, because every time I do, somebody's going to yell at me. But we eat just meat. We're carnivores. Never been healthier in my life. A lot of my aches and pains and sicknesses and illnesses have went away. I've told you that I've had asthma, and it's basically gone. My shoulder pain is gone. Carolyn's back pain is gone. We've lost weight. We can climb this hill 30 times a day now. No issues. Just making life more efficient. Carolyn's son came to stay here for a while, so we bought this camper. Now the camper came with some pretty cool stuff. Came with a microwave. It doesn't work anymore. And some coffee pots and different things. But we've been trying to get it to work well. We canned some food in it the other day. That was one reason why I tried to make the solar panels more efficient, was so he could run the air conditioner. Carolyn and I don't use the air conditioner. Now, as nomads, we learned we didn't need the air conditioner. We stayed in the desert in Utah. In August. It was miserably hot, but we learned that we can live with those kind of temperatures. So the other day, we learned the water heater. See, we have that on-demand water heater in the house. Well, we had two of them. We'll put one of them in here. Then we learned that, I guess when Carolyn's son was here, it stopped working, or after he left or whatever. He never mentioned it wasn't working. Wanted to do some dishes, so we used a coffee pot to heat the water. It takes 900 watts, so it's 100 watts more than the well pump, but it only takes 15 minutes to run. So I ran 2 coffee pot fulls of hot water. I only needed one to do the dishes. Filled this little pan up with that hot water. It was so hot I couldn't touch the water. So I filled the rest up with cold water and was able to do dishes just fine. So here we've been using propane because we have that on-demand water heater all this time, spending a lot of money. Now, if a prepper was to hear this information, well, you can't use propane in an SHTF situation when stuff hits the fan. There's not going to be any propane, there's not going to be any gasoline. Well, again, I'm not a prepper. But here, I've learned that we can run a coffee pot to heat hot water, or to heat water, off solar panels. So now, water is free, hot water is free, water is free from the well. Everything we're doing pretty much is free. We don't have to run that generator. Now, the freezer does need constant attention. I need to make sure the batteries are always charged so we can get through the night on those batteries. But if SHTF were to happen, we wouldn't use that freezer. I'd start canning all that meat in that freezer. It'd take probably a month to get done. And then I could shut the freezer off. And I wouldn't even need the generator on cloudy days to make sure the batteries were topped off. As long as the batteries got above 13.6 volts, the batteries will then be okay, because you got to get it above 13.6, otherwise they'll degrade a little bit. But if you can get it above 13.6 volts every day, and you should be able to do that even on cloudy days, then the batteries will be fine. So then all I'm going to happen to run is the well on sunny days, mostly sunny days. I can actually run the well on a pretty partly cloudy day. If I wait until about 11 a.m., the batteries are charged enough that I can run the well enough to fill the IBC tank, and then the rest of the day the batteries are charged even if it's a pretty cloudy day. But the same thing with this, we could still get hot water out of it. Again, don't do it before 11 o'clock. So another thing we've done is we used to percolate our coffee on the Coleman cook stove, so that was propane that we were using. Well, again, we don't have to. We could use the coffee pot. So we're going to get some filters, and we could make coffee out of the coffee pot. Again, free electric. We don't have. It's free. No energy. No natural resources. We don't have to buy anything. Carolyn has moved into cooking in here, but that is propane. But she does cook regularly on her outdoor setup, and she just built this kind of just finding things here and there. So she has this outdoor setup and she cooks on it all the time. You see she's got a big stack of firewood over here. So she's got her oven type of thing. She can use this as an oven. It has a thermometer on it so she knows the temperature of the oven. She can make a rocket stove out of it. She found this. These were all over the property when we moved here. So now she can make a rocket stove and cook off that. This is part of the rocket stove assembly. These wheel wells, and she's got a lot of firewood staged up, so she doesn't even need propane to cook. Pretty much we can stay here without buying anything. We got the eggs and the chicken. We can incubate our chickens, and we did that a couple of years ago. We weren't able to do it this year. We had a rooster problem, but we've explained all that, how, you know, bumps in the road will happen, but we still can survive. So our chickens, a bunch of chickens have died, and we survived it. It wasn't catastrophic. It was a bummer, but it wasn't catastrophic. I'm not a prepper, as you can tell. I'm not a prepper, because preppers don't do anything like this. Preppers stockpile and talk about how well they are prepared. They've got all their necessities. They've got their solar generator without solar panels or not, and they can run their entire house and air conditioning with it. I don't know how. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. But they got food to last for 90 days. And then they'll start hunting. Well, you can't hunt because everybody else is going to be hunting too, so they're going to wipe out the population. We used to have 4 deer here every day on this property, every day. After last hunting season, I hadn't seen a deer forever, and just the other day I saw 1. So the hunters just wipe them out. So you're not going to have a lot to hunt, so it's going to be raccoons and possums and things people don't want to eat. So can you actually eat a raccoon? Will your wife actually eat a raccoon? Don't know. You haven't tried it. You haven't tested yourself. So my point to this video is everything we have done here, we had to stop, reevaluate, and do over or do better all the time. We've been here 3 years and we're still trying to figure things out. Well, I don't know if we're trying to figure things out. We just come across things that make things better and easier and more efficient and more free, more self-sustaining. But a prepper doesn't do that. They go buy something and they put it in the closet, and then they cross their fingers that eventually something bad happens so they can use their new toy. We know that we can make it. We know for a fact that most of the problems that will occur, we can do okay. Now somebody's going to say, what about self-defense? You don't have a mag of people to help you. Well, I don't talk about my self-defense, and I don't need a mag. That's the only thing I can't test. But my assumption is once one person actually tries to cross my self-defense, nobody in the world will want to try it again. So, you know, you got that. But that's my only speculation. But I'm not that worried about it. I don't have to worry about it because I'm not afraid. That's another thing a prepper has that I don't. Fear. They're fearful. Third thing they have is they don't have a spouse that wants to participate with them. My wife wants to do this. Her and I are very happy here. But most preppers are trying to prepare so they keep their wife happy with air conditioning and all these promises of all the food they'll want, and they can't. So if you'll click this up next box to take you to a video where I was canning some food. So I hope I can inspire you to not be a prepper so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.